All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Assemble. My name is High Ruler, and today I'm going to be giving you guys my thoughts on 1.8 and the Cosmic Cube villain sector. So, the way I'm going to break this up is into three parts, right? So, I'm going to talk about the IP glitch or the IP bug, and then I'm going to talk about the actual gameplay itself, and then I'm going to be talking about the story and the implications of the story. So, this will have some spoilers near the end, okay? So, fair warning to anyone watching this video. So, the issue with the IP bug, and I tried to talk about this on Twitter, and maybe my points didn't come off clearly or concise enough, right? My issue with the bug itself is that it only impacts a small amount of people, right? You know, streamers, content creators, people who want to broadcast themselves playing the game, right? But the problem with that, even though it's impacting a small portion of your population, is that it's one of those things where I don't necessarily know how it happened in the first place, right? When we look at bugs or when we look at things, usually to my understanding of QA testing is that you have to replicate the bug so many times, right? So replicate it, document it, go back, do it again, right? So if you're able to do it, then you pass along to the team can then has an idea of, you know, where to investigate and fix it, right? The problem with this is that this bug is just so blatant on the screen, right? It's right there in front of you, right? You log onto the game on PS5 and you just open it up and it's right there. Your IP's right there for anyone. And it fuels the narrative of that with every patch, with every content release, there's another bug coming to the game. It just doesn't do any good around the discourse of the game. And that was the point I was trying to make. On a day like today, all we should be talking about is the villain sector, the Monica boss fight. Where does it go from here? The story implications. But now we're talking about the bug and what happened? Why is this bug here? Oh god, it's another Avengers drop. It's another bug, right? It fuels the narrative that unfortunately they don't need. On a day like today, we should all be talking about, hey, this was a really cool fight. You know, maybe next time you could do something like this, or this was really cool. It's an evolution of their boss fight mechanics. Like, there's a lot there that you can deep dive into and talk about, which I will do. But unfortunately, on a day like today, it's like, oh, did you guys hear about the bug exposing player IPs? Yeah, it's not really good. It's like, it sucks, right? And that was the point I was trying to make to Stardust on Twitter. You know, like, I know what the point Stardust was trying to make, and I'm not going to put words into his mouth because I don't want to talk for him, but I know it's frustrating to see the discourse around a bug that does impact a small amount of players. But the unfortunate thing is that even though it impacts a small amount of players, it's a compounding issue, right? And when you have compounding issues over a course of time, even though this bug may only affect a small amount of people, it's like, really? Again? And that was just the issue I had with it, right? It's another gut punch on a day where you should be getting a pat on the back. And that was the point I was trying to make, you know? If you're not a content creator, if you're not a streamer, if you're not someone who cares about broadcasting your gameplay, does this impact you? No, it really doesn't, right? And I said that, and I believe I said that at the start of my stream, right? If you're not a content creator, you're going to look at that and be like, whatever, who cares, right? If you're a content creator and you're a streamer, it does impact you, right? I had to play on the PS4 version, right? Lejeune, I don't even know if he's streaming today. Other content creators who may have had their IPs exposed. Like, it does suck and it does impact you, right? Because we live in a world now where if you're a content creator or if you're a streamer, we've all heard about swatting. We've all heard about people kind of taking your information and use it for nefarious purposes. This isn't something that I take very lightly. Personally speaking, you know, I've watched streamers who've been swatted. I'm very aware of how all this stuff happens. So for me, I was stuck between trying to figure out what to do. Obviously, I want to stream it and hang out with you guys, but I don't want to put myself or, you know, my family's work, you know, I got people working from home still, at jeopardy because of it, right? So it's one of those things where it's very, very tough to try and walk that line. And it's just one of those things where, once again, it's like, how does these things happen, you know? And that's kind of just where I was, right? How does a bug like this happen, right? Some of the more intricate stuff, I understand you got to replicate it over a course of time and then document it, report it, send it on. Something like this, it should have been like, oh, you know, you boot up your PS5, you know, 1.8 version. It's like, oh, we got identifying information there. Like, we got to fix this, guys, you know? It's good, once again, that they have a patch coming out tomorrow. So if for content creators, streamers, whatever, you know, you just got to wait a day, unfortunately. Once again, for the general population, you know, you can still play it and enjoy it regardless, but it just, to me, it's another gut punch, and that's really all it comes down to. And that was the point I was trying to make. So with that being said, now let's get into the actual gameplay of Cosmic Cube. So when I was playing the villain sector, I'm going to break this down into three parts, right? I'm going to talk about the outside, the first area you're in, which is the snowy tundra, and then I'll talk about the interior leading up to the casing of the Cosmic Cube, and then the final arena with Monica's boss fight. So as I kind of play through the first part here in the snowy tundra, it's a pretty typical snowy tundra outside area, but all in all, it was pretty fun to go through, right? The environments look pretty cool. You see all these like weird pillars and stuff. To me, this looks like a new kind of environment with the snowy tundra. So all in all, this was a very cool kind of environment to go through. I didn't do a lot of exploring here. I know when I looked around, there were some chests around, so there's probably a little bit of exploring that players can do to really maximize your chest to get everything that you really want. But all in all, when I think about this and how, most villain sectors have like 3 areas to go through, right? The first, the middle, and the end. This was a pretty cool first part. It's a very interesting first part. I'm interested to see, if there's any secrets laying around, how many more chests there are. It was very cool. It was honestly a very cool kind of open area. I liked it. Usually these parts to me feel like a little bit of fluff. So once again, this was pretty much a little bit of fluff, but like, if am I really gonna complain about that? No. I mean, all in all, it set the stage really well. Gets you into the mission. You kind of have to open the area up to get into the interior to go actually into where the cosmic cube is. So it did its job pretty well. You get some chests out of it. It's very good. It's fine. I really enjoyed this part of the mission. Maybe not so much after I run it, 30, 40, 50 times. But if we're just talking about this first time, first experience, then this was pretty fine, pretty cool, and I definitely enjoyed it all in all. Now, as we go through the second part, this is pretty standard, AIM underwater kind of base, right? It has pretty standard layouts, pretty standard kind of format to where you're doing. It doesn't really get interesting until the end, where you're once again kind of open up into this area where the casing for the cosmic cube is, right? Everything up until this point has been pretty standard Marvel's Avengers gameplay. Now, this is where the gameplay starts to deviate from the formula just a little bit, which for me was more than enough. So when you open up into this room here, basically what is happening is that there's 4 different corners which have platforms you to stand on. Now, this is pretty standard kind of objective gameplay for Avengers, but the thing about this is that it's actually in 3 stages. So each stage here has its own corresponding kind of objective to do in order to unlock the casing or break down the casing from the cosmic cube. The first one being, once again, you're standing on the corners, you're taking these objectives and you're holding these points of interest from the AIM bots. The second is that there's these 4 devices in the corners that are holding up the cosmic cube casing. Now, your objective once you're in here is to go in and break these in order to kind of disrupt the holding of the casing around the cosmic cube. So you're basically going in there and you're disrupting this casing, all while fighting all these aimbots on this little platform. It's actually pretty cool. This was actually a pretty cool, interesting thing. And it seems like they learned a little bit of this from the Red Room stuff, right? Now, it's obviously just a little bit different from the Red Room layouts, but I can kind of see where the inspiration from the Red Room stuff comes from within this mini part of the mission here. Very cool. I'd love to see them do more of this stuff moving forward. Now, once you break this down, you're opened up into the third part, which is the casing is starting to break apart from the cosmic cube. You're able to now damage the casing itself. So basically, the idea is that you basically stand where you spawn and you just hit it over and over and over again until it breaks. Now, this isn't supposed to be some crazy, DPS phase or even getting that much, there's aimbots spawning, but they're not really bothering you too much. The idea is the DPS rush it and just go right through it, right? It's not testing your DPS, but it is basically saying DPS this and go, right? And once you do that, it opens up and then you're transported into the arena with the Monica boss fight. Now, the Monica boss fight was actually really well done. I was very hyped for this. I was very hyped for the arena itself. And honestly, for a villain sector, it didn't let me down. It was very cool, all things considered. You get the Monica herself. You get different phases with her. She's in the bubble. You got to defeat the clones. And once the clones are defeated, you're able to do a damage phase for her. It seemed like there's a little bit of mechanics in here that really talks about their evolution in their boss fights mechanics. Now, is this monumental or is this a huge thing? Well, no, obviously not. Is this showing that they are trying to take in feedback and incorporate it in somehow, some way? Yeah, of course. Which to me shows definitely an evolution. Hopefully we see more of that moving forward. One of the more interesting things about this boss fight in particular is that she actually has a one-shot. So over the course of this boss fight, I counted 4 periods of time that I was able to damage her between each of the phases of the clones. At the end of the 4th one, she did her one-shot ability. Now, to me, this seems like an enrage timer based off of what I've seen and what I know about other games. I would have to go more and document my, how many times it takes for her to do the enrage timer. Now, one of the more interesting things is that it's not a one-hit kill for everyone. If you're able to stand behind the pillars, you're able to block the one-hit kill, and you're able to get back in there and kind of continue on with the boss fight, which is very cool. I actually like that they're incorporating more in the environment into the missions. They're incorporating more mechanics. They're incorporating, bosses able to actually go and damage you, in a one-shot kind of mechanic. These things to me seem like they're very good in the evolution of villain sectors. One of the things that I would like to see more is that there are timers dedicated to this phase right here that you're watching when it comes to the bubble itself. What I would have liked to see is the bubble actually expand outward if you're taking too long to kill the clones. This to me would have been a really cool, interesting mechanic that would have stressed players the time it needs to take to kill these clones, right? The longer you take to kill the clones, the more potential damage you're going to get from the bubble itself. Something like that could have been very cool. Now, I don't know if that's something that they, can take into feedback on and incorporate that moving forward. But I think the idea is that if you're taking too long, give players incentive, and by incentive, I mean damage, in order to move forward and actually progress with the mission. So all in all, when I look at this boss fight itself, I was pleasantly surprised. I was very entertained, and I thought it was very well done. Now, one of the more interesting things to take into account is that this is the evolution of villain sectors now. What I think players are really going to notice is the disparity between this villain sector and the ones that come before it. Whether you're talking the Abomination, the Maestro, whichever one that you think, the disparity between the quality and the mechanics of this one is going to be huge just because of how intricate and detailed this one is, right? The environments, the boss fight itself, the clones, like there's more to do in this one than the other ones in general. So I think it's one of those things where players now are going to be like, I want more of this. Don't give me the other ones. I want more of this one in particular, which I think they have every right to say that they want more of this style of villain sector. I think moving forward, if we get more of this kind of quality out of our villain sectors, then I hope that it speaks to the quality of what we should be expecting from other content, namely OLTs. So with that being said, am I pleasantly surprised? Yeah, I am. I think this villain sector really speaks to the strength of what they've learned from their feedback and incorporates it in a way that shows that they are evolving their boss mechanics, their boss fights. I really hope to see more of this in War for Wakanda, and if they don't, I think it'd be a very big disservice to their players. Okay, so now let's talk about the story aspect to Cosmic Cube in 1.8. So this definitely feels like the end of Future Imperfect, right? The end of Future Imperfect I found was very abrupt. It was very a weird ending, and it felt like there was more there that we definitely could have, touched on, right? The Cosmic Cube, Nick Fury, Monica, and it definitely feels like this was the actual end of Future Imperfect. I had said in my stream, like, oh, here's the real ending, right? Because to me, it felt like a definitive end, right? We see Old Man Hawkeye go down with Monica, and we don't know what happens to them next, right? We said that the Avengers are now in control of the Cosmic Cube with Hank and, Roy kind of looking to mess with it now, right? It definitely feels like, once again, this definitely ended off Future Imperfect in a way that makes sense versus what we actually got back in the update. And now it seems like the stage is being set for War for Wakanda. For anyone who's familiar with Miller has been speculating for a while now that the second villain that would come with War for Wakanda would be Ultron. Now with the end of Future Imperfect, with the end of Cosmic Cube, where we see Roy kind of messing with the Cosmic Cube there, just kind of poking his finger into it, it definitely feels like now Ultron is starting to kind of make its moves towards the forefront. Now this could go in two ways, right? Where Ultron could now be coming to the forefront by the time War for Wakanda is happening. Ultron is now kind of making these big moves, right? Hank Pym is now starting to mess with the idea of an AI to defend against the Kree invasion, and because of that, near the end of War for Wakanda, now Ultron has become a threat. Or Ultron is definitely dormant through the whole act of War for Wakanda, with only the end where we're seeing Hank Pym now kind of messing with the AI, right? So the difference there is, like, do we deal with Ultron or deal with the idea of Ultron during War for Wakanda, or do we deal with it near the end of Wakanda going into our next content drop, right? Now, the question remains of how they're going to do Ultron and what kind of style they're going to do Ultron and what's going to happen, right? Stardust and I have talked to lengths about the idea of Ultron coming to the game. How do you introduce him? Do you give him his own operation? Do you give him an expansion? Do you just drop him out of nowhere? I believe, if I remember correctly, I've just said you just got to do Ultron as quick as you can. Let's get a good villain out there, right? Whereas Stardust, if I remember correctly, and I don't want to put words into his mouth, has talked about giving Ultron, the stage, right? The forefront. Make sure Ultron gets the respect that he deserves as a huge Marvel villain. Both sides of this argument here are, I think, right? You want to make sure Ultron does get the stage he deserves, because he is a titanic villain when it comes comes to the Avengers. But I think also with the game where it is, you definitely need to start getting these villains out as quick as you can. If that means like he doesn't get the biggest stage of them all and he gets kind of like a medium sized stage, I think I would be okay with that because Ultron himself is a very cool villain. But I think if he's serving a greater purpose to get to the Korean invasion, I don't want him to have this huge operation or huge expansion in order just to get there. I think we definitely need to look at this as like Ultron is coming and it's a matter of when, not if, what kind of stage he's going to get. For me personally, looking at the story of what we've been given, I think the story so far and Cosmic Cube itself really lived up to my expectations of the story. I was very wary of kind of what they're going to do with the story, right? And how they're going to tie it all together, essentially. Cosmic Cube had this very important thing of like tying the end off of Future Imperfect and starting the beginning of War for Wakanda. And it did it quite well. Now we're going to have to see what happens moving forward. Is Patrol Mode going to be a part of a narrative that is going to further the story into Wakanda? I don't know specifically. I don't think so. And I'd be very interested to see if they were able to do something like that. But with that being said, if this is the end of the narrative content until August, I think we're off to a good start here. We kind of know that Wakanda's coming and it's going to set itself up before we get there. We now know that Roy and Ultron are kind of messing around now. We know Hank Pym is going to start messing around with the Cosmic Cube. We're starting to see kind of these gears start moving a little bit forward now. But because of that, there's still one question that I need to ask. Where is Nick Fury, right? Nick Fury, the head of S.H.I.E.L.D., like such a huge important character in the Marvel Universe. And the question remains, where is he? Do I think he's going to show up in War for Wakanda? I don't think so. I'd be very pressed to try and think of a situation where he would be involved in that, if not near the end. So the question remains, like, where is he? How do we get him? Because to me, he's a very important part of the Avengers narrative and the journey, and I really want to see him kind of make an appearance sooner rather than later. If his appearance kind of comes at the end, kind of gearing up for the Kree invasion, I mean, hopefully they give him an appearance worthy of the character, right? But I'd really like to see Nick Fury kind of make his mark sooner rather than later and kind of get him involved in the action. Like I said, I would have loved to see Nick Fury as a summon character, you know, a major artifact summon. So I'm speaking very selfishly when I want Nick Fury involved, because the sooner he gets involved, the sooner that may be a reality for me personally. But all in all, the story side of Cosmic Cube was very well done. I think what they had there was really good, and I really am excited now for seeing what's next in War for Wakanda. The story was good, the gameplay was good. The only downer part of today was the bug itself that affected the streamers and the content creators, you know, showing the IPs. If we're just looking at the gameplay itself, right, if we're taking that part and we're kind of dividing it away from the chunk of the gameplay and the chunk of the story, I think what we got today was very cool. It was short, but it was sweet. It was really cool to play through. And I really hope that Crystal Dynamics does more with this kind of style of content. I would have loved to see special unique rewards tied to this mission itself. I know we have the event coming, and with the event there's an animated nameplate and there's so on and so forth. But for the actual villain sector itself, I would have loved to see like a Cosmic Cube major artifact reward or something like that, right? Something that gives players an incentive to run this, if not just for the story itself, but for actually a reward tied into the gameplay factor of it all. So maybe moving forward, one of my suggestions would be, if you're going to do a villain sector kind of like this, tie something into it on a gameplay reward scale to give us players something to actually go chase after, right? And I think if you do that, you're in for a good treat. But just looking at Cosmic Cube itself, if you're wondering, do I play this? Yeah, I would say go play this. It's short, it's sweet, it's not going to take you too long. It is a little bit challenging depending on your play style, what characters you're playing, if you're playing in a group, but I think that's part of the fun in it. So my recommendation, guys, if you're looking at the Cosmic Cube event, do you play it? I would say 100% go play it. And with that being said, that's it for Assemble today. I'll see you guys in the next video, which is coming up very soon. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.